Imagine a Category 5 hurricane forming off the coast. The meteorological data is definitive, and the emergency broadcasts are looping on every frequency. When faced with this kind of looming disaster, people rarely unite in a single logical response. Instead, human behavior predictably splinters into three distinct camps. You have the early evacuators, who pack their cars the moment the warning sounds. You have the risk-takers, who board up their windows and wait to see exactly how bad the winds get. And finally, you have the holdouts, who sit on their front porches, refusing to budge. This behavioral split predates modern media, reflecting a core psychological architecture of human survival. Centuries before modern psychology, the Sindhi Panchatantra used a simple fable to illustrate these exact human profiles. The story follows three friendly fishes living in a pond who overhear a group of fishermen walking by. The fishermen are explicit. They plan to return the very next morning to cast their nets and empty the pond. The threat is undeniable. Yet, the drastically different reactions of these three fishes present a question that still applies to us today. When faced with an incoming disaster, which survival strategy actually works? The third fish hears the fisherman's threat clearly, but she refuses to leave. The pond has been her home her entire life, and she decides that whatever is destined to happen will happen. Psychologists call this normalcy bias, the assumption that since our environment was safe in the past, it will automatically remain safe in the future. This mental blind spot makes the brain reject clear warnings of catastrophe, causing a person to freeze rather than act. The consequence in the fable is immediate. The next morning, the fisherman casts his net. Paralyzed by her misplaced faith in the status quo, the third fish is easily scooped up and killed. Passive fatalism in the face of explicit data is an evolutionary dead end. The second fish takes a different approach. She considers herself highly intelligent, so she decides to stay in the pond and wait until the fishermen actually arrive before figuring out an escape plan. This represents reactive crisis management. It is the strategy of relying on raw intelligence to improvise a solution, but only once the person is under extreme stress. When she gets swept up in the net, her intellect kicks in. She lies completely still, feigning death. Disgusted by the seemingly rotten catch, the fisherman tosses her back into the water, and she escapes. While it seems like a victory, this survival relied entirely on the unpredictable variable of the fisherman's specific reaction. If he had tossed dead fish into a separate bucket, the strategy would have failed. High-stress improvisation is dangerous because it introduces catastrophic variables completely outside the survivor's control. That brings us to the first fish, known as the wise one. The moment she hears the fisherman's conversation, she immediately swims out of the pond and relocates to another body of water. This is proactive risk management, taking decisive action based on the data, long before the threat ever materializes. Here, survival required no dramatic escape from a net, no physical trauma, and absolutely no luck. She simply made a calm, early exit. True proactive wisdom often goes unnoticed because it successfully eliminates the need for heroics. Contrast the aftermath of our two surviving fishes. The improviser survived by fractions of an inch and went through a traumatizing near-death experience. The forecaster survived by miles and remained completely unharmed. Modern culture heavily idolizes the improviser. We love stories about the brilliant hero who narrowly escapes disaster at the last possible second. This cultural obsession with last-minute saves hides the immense, unnecessary physical and emotional toll that reactive survival demands. The fable exposes a human paradox. The smartest person in a crisis is rarely the wisest. The story suggests that survival itself is a poor metric for success. Real advantage lies in the foresight to trust the data and leave the pond before the net ever hits the water. Navigating through inevitable storms requires the resolve to think properly and proactively, choosing to avoid problems entirely rather than relying on our intelligence to survive them.